Hi again everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. So the matter at hand is that the 180-day Lucid stock lockup date is upon us, and I for one am watching for a bit of a dip in the stock price as a result of this. I'm out of the stock at the moment, but am very curious as to what happens today, as it gives us a good reading for what particularly early investors are thinking about the Lucid Motors stock at its current price. So this video is a quick discussion about the nature of the lockup and some discussions on how the stock is currently trending in relation to that. So let's get straight into it. So the lockup period is going to be quite insightful, as depending on the volume of trade, we will start to get an idea about how early investors are feeling about Lucid Motors stock. If the stock is heavily traded down, it is an indication that early investors see the stock as overvalued and are taking advantage of that. On the other hand, if there is not as much selling off of the stock, it is a sign that optimism for the future of the stock is still quite strong. Of course, we have to keep in mind that just under 70% of the 1.2 billion shares outstanding are held by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which I do not feel are likely to be sold off. So that does need to be considered when watching Wednesday's buying and selling action. So to historically show you what happened when the September 90-day lockup period expired, the stock was on a bit of a slide leading up to this event, albeit a low volume slide. Once the lockup period expired, the stock then opened the session, which marked this moment a whole 20% lower. However, the stock had managed to fight back much of the losses from the early sell-off in the days and weeks ahead. We can see the nature of the sell-off by these early candlesticks, which reflect all the stocks that were exchanging hand. As I said, thankfully for shareholders, there was somewhat of a V-shaped recovery for the stock soon afterwards that was strongly supported. Much of this optimism was driven by a spate of good news from Lucid Motors, however. So it's worth keeping in mind the news cycle surrounding the business in the different contexts. Switching to our current scenario, we can see that way it is playing out. Last week, when I did my last update on the stock and advised that I had sold my position, fortuitously for me, I sold at a near high point at $45. The stock has retreated close to 20% since then, so it is safe to say we are seeing a bit of a repetition of history. Though it would seem the market is not expecting as severe a downturn on January 19, as the lead-in slide has only been about 20% versus the almost 40% experienced in the lead up to September, though that decline was over a much longer period. If the stock is to open Wednesday's trade around 20% lower, in line with how it opened in September, I will be watching for the $35 to $36 price point, as this may be close to the bottom of how far the stock will fall on the day, and therefore presenting a potential good buying opportunity. It is also important to acknowledge that the market is not in the same general condition as it was back in September. Bond yields are now at a 2-year high, and market optimism is arguably at an 18-month low. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see lower price points tested by the stock. I'd be particularly keeping an eye out for the $32 and even the $30 price point, particularly in the pre-market. It is reassuring that Lucid has recently received a $39 price target from Redburn analysts, which is currently where the stock is sitting now. So it's nice to know that if I do buy back in on this potential dip, there is some professional expectation that the price will rise back up to its current levels. So like I said, I have covered this topic in more depth before, but now as the 180-day lockup period is set to expire, my gut feeling and based on the performance of the charts, I don't expect to see as severe a sell-off as we saw back in September. However, in my mind, I can also make a case for the stock being acutely impacted by the early investors selling off, because the current price levels do represent a much more substantial return for the early investors than the September price point did. Therefore, a very good opportunity to cash in on that return. Whether they do it or not, we will soon see, I guess. Not that this is advice, but I would particularly advise holders of Lucid Motors to be watching the pre-market, because most of the selling action is likely to happen before the bell. Anyway, what do you guys think? Are you also viewing January 19 as a potential buying opportunity for Lucid Motors? Will there be as swift a recovery for Lucid after whatever shares are sold once the lockup is over? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if there is a stock you would like to see me cover in a future video, mention a ticker symbol in the comments and I will see what I can do. Till next time everyone, may the markets trade in your favour. Cheers.